Little quick introduction on myself. So I've been the head of e-commerce for Canon Europe for about 2.5 years now. Previously, I was head of e-commerce for Riot Games, another very high growth company that expanded very quickly. And previous to that, worked for Digital River, a big software as a service provider for the e-commerce space, again, delivering big e-commerce platforms across the world. So that's a little bit about me. But about Canon, so Canon's got nearly 90 years of history, perhaps not known recently as an innovator, but surprisingly it is still very innovative in its approach to new products. So in 2016 they were number 3 for the world number of patents applied for and received, and that's ahead of Apple or Google. So from a product perspective, very, very innovative, very focused on their product mix. But that's not the be-all and end-all now, because the market has rapidly changed around Canon, and there's been a lot of challenges that they now have to address. And so over the last 4 to 5 years, there's been an ongoing change management program, initially called Generation, but now moved into a digital transformation project, which was about how does Canon need to re-pivot and readdress what customers now want from a manufacturer. So previously we were great, we were very product focused, we were making great products and pushing that out into retail, and retail was doing a great job of reaching our customers for us. But customers now look for a very different way to interact with us. And so we've identified over the last couple of years some digital capabilities that we wanted to bring into the business, but also new channels that we wanted to address that previously we hadn't been very strong in. So we looked at all of our data, which is quite big and vast, and we wanted to centralize that and put that into one central repository. So we've looked at CRM. We've looked at our social and digital capabilities and brought a lot of that now into house and pushing strongly through that. We've got e-commerce, which is obviously my area, which I'll talk about now, and new services and new products, because customers now they expect more than just the product. They expect a whole ecosystem, they expect your product to be interconnected, they expected other additional services that we now have to address in the market. So we wanted to build a whole new ecosystem around our core products and a way to speak to customers going forward. So the vision for the e-commerce store was to establish that as a premium retailer with unique value propositions and experiences. That was to make it different to standard retail, which still does what it does very, very well. We don't really want to drive into that market. There will be some elements of cannibalization, but essentially we wanted to make sure that Canon products were still shown in their perfect way, in a perfect light, and positioned to customers with added value to show our depth and range of product available. So rather than just selling you the camera, we wanted to talk about the storage, the apps, the training courses we could provide to give more depth to those products. So the proposition development really started in about 2015. We wanted to, at that point, we were just building an e-commerce store. We wanted to push that out into as many countries as possible. So it was 6 countries in 6 months, in the last 6 months of 2015, which was a big ask for quite a small team at that time. And that was just to get us into position. And then it was to expand across the rest of Europe, really to proposition ourselves to make sure that we were at least as good as retail, but to quickly bring in this premium feel of how we were going to get beyond that. And the ultimate aim is to really start to redefine what the customer expectation from an e-commerce store, a brand e-commerce store is, and what we should present to them, and how we were going to develop that. But do that at scale and across multiple markets, because for Canon Europe, that's Europe and Africa. And that's a lot of very different complex markets. So going back to the kind of topic of agility, so a recent Harvard Business Review article has suggested that adaptability is the new competitive advantage. I would argue that adaptability has always been a requirement of all businesses, and it's just that the speed of change is now becoming so fast that we have to have new ways of approaching that. And we also have to be ready to change business models as well as technology. So when we start to talk about e-commerce agility, there's a couple of reports that have identified certain areas, but in our, again, talking about localization, internationalization, it's how easy it is for you to get into new markets, how quick you can spin up new stores, but also provide exactly what the customers require in those new countries. There's varying different complexities that you'll encounter, but it's the speed at which you can get into those markets that will really help you get to more customer focus. So what was the Canon approach? Really, when we think about agility, we split it into three main areas, so people, platforms, and processes, and I'll just take you quickly through kind of our approach around those different areas. So, whilst there's all this talk of digital transformation and new tools, and there's plenty of providers out there trying to sell new tools, really everything about e-commerce is still about people. Ultimately, people buy the products online, and it's your employees that are trying to connect with those people. It's mainly they're using tools just to do that quicker, better, and more efficiently. But it all comes back to people. And if you don't have the right people, and you don't understand the people you're trying to sell to, that's when your business model is going to start to fall apart. So without a good team, any tool really is redundant, because you won't be able to give that tool direction, you won't be able to control that tool, you won't be able to put business rules around that tool. So in the beginning, I was very keen just to build a digital-first culture within the e-commerce team at Canon. Canon has its own great culture as well. These are specific to the e-commerce team that we wanted to build from the get-go to make sure that we had the right mentality to do what we wanted to do. So I wanted the team to be revenue-orientated, so irrespective of what their role is, whether or not that's a merchandiser or someone in customer service, they understand not only where the revenue is coming from and how it's generated, but also their role in making that revenue. They understand their value contribution to that overall revenue. They're data informed, they understand where to find the data, they understand how to use data and put that into an argument to take forward. If you're coming to me with an assumption, that's useless to me without some data to back up that assumption, which will take it forward. We pursue perfection, pursue being the term there, because perfection can never really be achieved, but as long as you're pursuing that, you're on the right path. We focus on what matters, so we have people that can identify and follow objectives, KPIs, without straying off that path. And we have team players, because ultimately e-commerce is a team sport. There's no room for individuals just going off on a tangent. And I have thought leaders in the team. This is really important for me at Canon, so that if I have someone who's in charge of affiliates for e-commerce, they're not only the expert within our team, they're the expert within Canon on affiliates. We have an international team, and I think this is very important if you're going to look at international expansion. We have Spanish, Italians, UK, Irish, French, Swedish, many different nationalities, and whilst I wouldn't expect them to be the go-to person to tell me everything about that market, it really helps to give that team an understanding of international markets, an understanding of different cultures. However, when you are expanding, it still needs to be even more focused than that. So when we were deploying our countries, we created this new role, which was International Deployment Manager, which is two guys that we put in charge of going through the exact minute detail of everything we need to look at from a business readiness point of view. We had an IT roadmap as well, and they fed into that, but this was a business readiness. What do we need to look at and speak to in those countries around a business readiness, and how do we get performance from that going forward? So platforms, as I said, people are at the heart of everything, but platforms can help people achieve more. Platforms are the tools to help you move faster and do better. This is the difference between having a screwdriver and a power drill. This is to make you be more efficient. And with internationalization, you're always going to be forced to make some kind of compromises, or in theory you are. It's a standardization or it's a localization. Standardization, I'm going to copy and paste. I've got a model that works for the UK, I'm going to copy and paste that across Europe. Or I'm going to localize, I'm going to create something bespoke for that country, I'm going to put that in there. But both of those have their problems, both of those have their pros and cons. But why can it not be both? Why can you not standardize certain things and localize others? And if you have the right tool sets and the right platforms, that is possible. This is a very simplified customer-facing tech stack for how we operate across Europe. It's not complete, and I'm happy to talk to anybody afterwards about kind of how we use other platforms. It doesn't have all our analytics, which I'll come on to in a second. But really at the heart of everything is that customer, and whether they're French, German, Italian, we're trying to serve that customer in the best way. We work on Oracle ATG, and that's been built by our development outsourcing Spindrift, and we have the ancillary support mechanisms around that to make that scalable across the entire of Europe, but also flexible enough that we can modularize and look at the minute detail and make that platform work exactly how we need to do it from a localization point of view. At the same time, we've onboarded an integration company, in this case Pentagon for us, which allows us to look at marketplaces across Europe. This gives us a two-pronged strategy for going into new markets. I can either spin out a brand new Canon's Pure Blood store, or I can look at an integration into a marketplace, perhaps an eBay store, perhaps a local retailer that does marketplace, Poland, Aleppo, something like that. I've now got options to either go in through marketplace, through a main store, or a combination of the two. I've WorldPay across Europe for flexible payments, but we do have other payment partners in the background, again, to give us that flexibility because every country is different. And when we're talking about these partners, it's really important that you have partners you can trust, but are also adding value over and above the services they provide. They're going to give you information about how to enter those markets. Your payment provider is really important. The guys before were talking about kind of entering the German market. There are problems with different payment methods. You will get caught out. There are fraud issues with certain payment methods. If you don't know what you're doing, you may get stuck. We use Syncreon for our warehousing, and again, a very scalable solution that we have with them, and they're well known for their agility in that field. UPS for easy deliveries across the entire of Europe, trackable for our high-end products, Syncreon for reverse logistics, and Arvato again for scale for customer service. Backing that all up is the analytics. So we use Google Analytics Premium, and behind that we have several other technology platforms from an analytics point of view. What I wanted to do from the very first was to make us a data-centric organization, to bring data and analysis and CRO at the heart of everything. To this end, we immediately brought in Google Analytics Premium, and on the back of that, we already had Optimizely in-house for CRO, but we brought in Clicktail, we brought in Qualaroo for surveying, we've brought iQuant in for checking designs, we've got Telium for both tagging and audience management as well. And that was to immediately have the right tools in place to make good decisions about how we would expand across Europe and how we would serve those customers. Into 2017, we've now pushed out to integrate with Salesforce, which was part of Canon's overall CRM program, and we're using Tableau to visualize all our data. And again, the team are all trained in how to get to that data. There is no specialist requirement. It's all available to those people to make good decisions about moving forward. In the future, we want to move to a much more prescriptive way of working where we can preempt decision-making, we can understand our customers fully, because this helps me almost leapfrog localization. If I can have a one-to-one conversation with my end user, I do not then need to make assumptions about them. I do not need to make assumptions that they are French and probably act in this way. I know who they are. They've shown me through their actions, and through my analytics, I have an understanding of what they require. To that end, around the CRO, we've already seen really big differences between countries. This was a product detail page cross-sell test. And this was a very successful test in most markets, apart from Germany, where it actually had a negative impact on conversion. We actually saw a downward take in sales. This means that this was, whilst it was positive, we saw a very different reaction from the German audience there. We can start to plan how we would then push out this test into a live situation and what we should do across different markets. It's that importance that you have with your platforms to be able to identify these differing issues that you will encounter across Europe. Within the team, we try to work in an agile fashion. We use Jira to make sure that happens. It's probably you're aware of it from more the IT side of the business, but we've tried to bring that into the business side of the business. So the teams are using this to manage their workloads, to build Kanban boards, virtual Kanban boards, which then feed up into a management layer. So processes, and for me, processes are a little bit of a double-edged sword. They can kill a business. I truly believe that too much process will kill your business quicker than anything else. A process needs to be there to make you better and quicker. A process is not there to lock things down and tie things off. So if you're building processes, they have to be there to make things better. Going back to that data first piece, what we've tried to do is put all of our analytics and CRO testing and data gathering ahead of everything else. So we have a process in place that means that that team is always generating new information, new reporting that we can use to make better decision making. This is then brought in front of all of our IT development as well. So for IT development, there's mainly there's more than two cases. There are tech debt and other things that you just have to build, but from a business perspective, there's only two ways to get into our development roadmap. That is a successful CRO test that you have backed and you've proven a business case and it has a revenue number against it, or you have used data to build a full business case to prove that that will be something beneficial to take into our roadmap. However, that's not the end of the story. It will then still go into a backlog, which is then sorted again and prioritized again. And even through our entire development roadmap, we have various different stages where we're still qualifying everything that happens. And it's that qualifying and checking off process that means that we're always producing what's right for the customer at the right time. There we go. But sometimes you just need a really solid plan. So with country launches, and we've done 15 of those so far, and we've got another one to do before the end of the year, we basically have become quite good at this now. And really it came down to minute detail, line by line detail of what does it take to launch a country. A full checklist of everything we needed, not just from an IT performance side, but also from a business readiness side. What does the business team need to have ready? What information do they need to be ready? What operational things do we need to be ready to do once that country goes live? And that was just a really big plan that we had to go through step by step, and sometimes that's what it takes. Within the team, we work, as I said, we try to work in an agile fashion. And to that end, we have a weekly tracker for each of the managers in my team. This is to call out what they're working on, what they have worked on, what they're going to work on, and any key requests they have of the senior leadership, as well as calling out their key KPIs and their priorities. So this gives us an instant flag on a week-by-week basis of any problems that we need to escalate, anything we need to take out of the e-commerce team into a wider setting. So again, it brings that instant and more agility into our processes of how do we identify issues or identify opportunities and take them out quickly and address them. So that's a really whistle-stop tour of kind of how we approach e-commerce at Canon. There's lots of other things that we do. Obviously, I didn't touch on digital marketing or merchandising, but we use similar methodology throughout those teams as well. But if I was going to give you a quick kind of recipe for success, it would really be kind of make sure you're building in a digital culture from the start, that you're always looking at this. Make sure that you have that international outlook. If international is on your radar, you have to think internationally as well. It's not copy and paste. You have to have flexible platforms and flexible partners that are able to flex with you and all give you that ability to be agile across markets. Have an agile team with an agile methodology. I wouldn't say you have to be pure agile, but there are certain aspects of the agile methodology which can be brought quite easily into business teams. Good planning tools. Sometimes, like I say, it's just a really good solid plan and trackers. Sometimes it's having those tools that can help you plan better. And really think about personalization, even individualization, because that can help you shortcut those localization issues. So I'll leave you with one final thought, that kind of digital agility isn't just about technology. It's really a mindset that you need to build into the team. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much.